Hello, this is Jared from Commit Quality, and in today's video we're going to go over a new way to create locators in Playwright. So introduced in version 1.27, we now have an even easier way of creating locators, and as stated by Playwright right here, it just makes writing locators a joy. So before we get started, if you haven't already seen my introduction to locators video, I'll put the link on the screen now and I'll add it into the description. As you can see on the screen now, there's a few new methods added to create locators. You've got getByText, getByRole, getByLabel, getByPlaceholder, getByAltText, getByTitle, and there is another one as well which isn't listed here, which is getByTestID, which is really good. So I'm going to jump into VS Code and we're going to take a look through all of these. Awesome. So before we get started, we need to make sure that we have the latest version of Playwright, or at least we're on version 1.27, which is the latest at the time of this video. So in your package.json file, go to your Playwright Test dependency and make sure you've updated 1.27.0 and then run an npm install in your command line. I've already done this and everything is up to date. And the only other thing I've done is I've created a new test file with a new test declaration, which is so we can utilize the new getBy methods. Now, I'm going to be using a few different web apps in this example to show you all the different kind of getBy methods and how we can use them. If you want to follow along, pause along and you can copy the links. I can put them in the description as well. You'll probably already know most of these. We'll be using Amazon, Google, and the React To-Do MVC app. Let's go on to the React app page and let's just get the URL. So I'm going to be using this for the first test. And we're going to say await page. Okay, we don't have the page fixture, of course. Let's add that in. So we can say await page.go to, and I'm just going to paste that URL that I just had. Great, so we're there. And I'm going to add a page.pause because I want to show you how it's working and how it finds the elements. Of course, if you use the VS Code extension, you can add breakpoints and debug from here, but I'm going to be running by a command line for this example. So let's go back to the React To-Do MVC. And the first thing you can see is we want to add something in here. So I could say subscribe and then hit enter and it adds it. So we'll use the first getBy method will be getByPlaceholder, and we can say let's get this text box by the placeholder of what needs to be done. So I'm just going to copy this so it's a like for like, and I'll go back to my test and I'm going to say await page getBy, and you can see now we have all of these here. So I'm going to say getByPlaceholder, and I'm just going to pass the placeholder through, and then I'll say dot fill. We'll say subscribe to commit quality. Okay, awesome. And because how the app works, we'll also need to hit enter as well. So I'm going to say await page dot getByPlaceholder again. Now I could have just put this into a kind of variable, but we'll do it a long way for now. And we'll say what needs to be done again. And I'm going to say dot press the enter key. So it enters for us. So what this should do now is should go to the To-Do MVC app. We should obviously pause the page, so our debug and our Playwright Inspector will pop up. And then it should say find the locator by the placeholder of what needs to be done, fill in subscribe to commit quality, and then make sure we press enter on it so it actually enters it. So should we give that a go? Let's say down in our command line, npx playwright test, and I'll add the headed attribute. Okay, here we go. So we're on the page and we've just paused it so we can step over this. So I'm going to step over, and what we should see is here we are. GetByPlaceholder has found what needs to be done. If I step over, it should fill it in. And now we should be using the same locator of getByPlaceholder, what needs to be done, to just hit enter to say, add it to our to-do. Awesome. And that's the first thing we've just done with the getBy method. We've just found it by the placeholder. Now, instead of having to say, page.locator and then square brackets, placeholder equals what needs to be done, we can now do it this way using getByPlaceholder. And if you're not too familiar with locators, I'd suggest go into view my introduction video because that'll give you more of an insight as how we would have done it before we had these getBy locator methods. Nice. So I'm going to close this down then, or I'll just continue so it closes down. That passed great. So we've seen that it's added something on there. But now, what if we want to actually assert that this text that we've just added, this to-do, has actually been added? Now we can do that, and we can use, so let's comment this a moment, and we'll say getByPlaceholder. Now what we can do is say getByText. So we can use the getByText method now to assert that text is on the screen. So I'm going to say await, expect, and inside here, where we would have before and said page.locator, we're just going to do page getByText. And I'm going to copy the text I just added into the fill here. And we'll just say to be visible. Await, expect. Oh, we got to add the expect into here. Of course, we have to import it in, and we'll say to be visible. Awesome. So now what we're doing is we're using the getByPlaceholder method to enter all the details. To get the locator and then use fill to enter the details and press enter. And now we're saying we want to get the locator, which has subscribed to commit quality, and we want it to be visible. So let's run this again then and see what happens. Cool, so we've hit the page.pause here. So let me step over this. I'm going to fill in the details. We know all that works. And now what it's doing is it's saying, look for a locator on the page that has the text of subscribe to commit quality. We can see it there, that it has it. And now if I just step over that, we should see the test passed because it was visible and we found it. Much easier than before. Again, instead of having to say inside here, page.locator, and then say text equals, we've just got this nice new method which makes it a lot more readable to us. Now, before we move on, I also want to touch on the options that we can add into these. So getByText has this option called exact. And what exact does, whether or not you want to find your locator by an exact match. So that's case sensitive and a whole string. So it defaults to false. So I could say here, let's lowercase what needs to be done on both of these, and we lowercase the commit quality, even though it's an uppercase. Okay, so I step over, I'll just run it actually, because it'll fail if it doesn't. If I run it now, you can see that it's a capital W, but because the option is always false by default, all this still passed. But now what I want to do is I'm going to add the option into here for exact, and I'm going to say to be true. Now, you're probably expecting this to fail, and you'd be right, and that's because it doesn't match the casing anymore. We'd expect in a capital W. So let's run this and we'll watch it fail. Okay, so I'm going to run through this now, and you can see it's stopped at this, it's trying to find it, and it's not going to find it, it's going to hit the timeout. And the reason why is because we've added this exact option to be true. So that's really useful to know, and I should mention that this gets ignored when locating by a regular expression. So if you're finding just by a simple string, then you can use this and that's completely fine. I'm now going to close this off because we can see that it's not going to find it. So let's exit out of that, and I'm going to take this option back off, just so nothing fails. Okay, awesome. So, and once again, getByText has the same thing. It has the exact option we can add into here, and it can do the same thing. So I could say here, exact to be true, and you'd see the same outcome happening here. So let's just remove that. And you could play around and have a little go with all these as well. But the next thing I want to talk about is the getByTestID method. So we'll add in here getByTestID. And to be honest, this might be my favorite method they've added. And what the getByTestID method is going to do is it's going to locate the element by the test ID. By default, the data-test-ID attribute is used. So it'd be data-test-ID like this. So if you have this in your web applications, great. You can just use getByTestID out of the box and you can start finding it. But what if you use something different? So not everyone's apps use data-test-ID. If I go into the React to-do one, what you'll see here is this text box, this input, has a data-React ID, but there's no test ID attribute. So what we can actually say is we can overwrite this default data test ID that it looks for to something else, and that's exactly what I'm going to do next. So let's go back into the tests, and because we are saying it's using React ID, I'm going to say await selectors dot set test ID attribute, and it says here define custom attribute name to be used in the getByTestID call. What was the one in the React code? It was data React ID. So let's copy that and we'll add that in here. So now we've overrode it, and every time we use the getTestID method, it's going to look for an attribute of data equals React ID, and then we can pass whatever we want the value to be. So I'm going to say await page dot getByTestID, and now I can just put in what the value was in here. So it was this 0.0.1. I'm going to say 0.0.1, and we'll fill again. Have you subscribed yet? And once again, we're going to need to press the enter so it adds it in. Okay, so let's do that. And now let's run the test. So what we should see is we're using Placeholder up here. It'll enter it all. It's obviously doing that validation check, which is there. But now it's going to come down. It's going to use the getByTestID, which we've overwrote the custom data-test ID to say look for attributes with data-react ID. So let's run this and see if it works as we expect. Awesome. So I'm going to step over these because we know these parts work. GetByText, we know it works. And look, now we've got by data-test-ID, or sorry, by data-react ID because we overwrote it. And we're now finding it by 0.0.01, and it's found it here. And if I step over, we'll see it's filled the details. And it's hit enter. So here we are. You've got subscribed commit quality, and have you subscribed yet? The answer should be yes, and you can tick off the to-do. So let's click continue, and that's all worked as expected. Fantastic. Okay, so now we're going to use Google instead. So I'm going to keep this method here, but I'm going to create a new one, and I'll say getByMethods, and we'll say using Google. We can delete everything after the page.pause. I'll keep that in just so we can use it as visual examples again. And now instead of going here, I want to say let's go to google.com. And I also know I need to click the accept all on the cookies banner to show examples. So I'm just going to say page.getByText. Luckily, I don't know the casing, but because the exact match it defaults to off, I can say accept all. So if it isn't the correct casing, it'll be fine. I'm going to say find it by last because I know that button is lower down in the DOM. I'm just going to do a click. This is just the setup, so don't worry about this. All I'm doing is clicking the cookies accept all button so we can start using the other getBy methods. So let's go on to the Google page. And the next thing I'll show you is the getByTitle attribute, or method, which looks for the title attribute, which is this, which is called search. So I'm going to enter something into this search box. So let's go back to our test, and we're going to say getByTitle. I will say await page dot getByTitle, and oh, that was not what I wanted. Search, and I'm going to say fill it in with subscribe. Okay, so that's great. So we're just saying get it by title of search. Once again, I could use the exact option, but I don't need to. So I'm just going to run this and see what happens. So let's do npx Playwright Test headed, and let's see what happens. Oh, one thing we've missed out is I need to add an only annotation on here, so we're not running all the tests. So let's do that and rerun it. Awesome. So it's paused the page. Now if we step over it, we should see it's getting it by the title of search, and we stepped over and click enter subscribed, and it's done it all for us. Wonderful. So instead of having to say, you know, square brackets title equals, what was it, search, now we can just use the getByTitle method. You can even specify if you want it to be the exact option like we did with the other ones. Fantastic. So let's just continue off that and go through. The next getBy method I want to go over is getByRole. So let's go to Google and just see what we can look for this. I believe the buttons have a role of button. Great. So role of button, and we can say get it by the area, the accessibility name of Google search. So that should work fine for us. So what is the getByRole method? Let's type it out a second and it can give us the description. getByRole. So let's read it. Required area role. It allows locating elements by the area role, attributes, and accessibility name. But one thing to note here, which is very, very crucial, is that the role selector does not replace accessibility audits and conformance tests, but it just gives kind of early feedback about the area guidelines. So one thing we can do here is we can search for what it is. So it comes up with all the different role types, and we're going to say it's a role of button. And then we're going to add an option which says we want to get it by the accessibility name. So name, and that was Google search. And now I want to say, let's just click it for the fun of it. Google search.click. I'm also going to add a page.pause down below, just so it stops in there, and we'll move that one here. So let's run the test. And now what we should see is we find the button by the role of button and the accessibility name of Google search. Okay, awesome. So it's filled in subscribe. If we now step over, we're now looking for that button of Google search, which it's found it. If I click step over, it now clicks that button and it actually does a Google search for subscribe. So perfect. Before we move on from the getByRole method, I just want to go to the documentation very quickly because there's a bunch of different options you can use on here. So we use the accessibility name, but you've got like checked, disabled, expanded, include hidden, and a bunch more as well. So it's definitely worth having a look through the documentation on this to see exactly what option you want to use with your role locator. Okay, so the last thing I want to show on the Google side is getByAltText. I thought this was a nice easy one because if I go back to the Google homepage, we can get this image by its alt text, which is Mustafa El Badi's 94th birthday. So we won't click any of this now, so I'm just going to comment out this getByRole because we don't want to do that. We can keep the search in there, that shouldn't cause any problems. And now I'm going to say await, caps lock, await page dot getByAltText, which is obviously used for images. And I'm going to say this, and let's just say expect it to be visible. Expect this to be visible. And obviously that await goes over here because this is a web first assertion. And now let's run the test and see what happens. Okay, so let's just step over this, and for that expect, it's found it, it's highlighted it. If we step over, we can see all is working perfectly and the test has just passed. Brilliant. So it's a nice easy way of getting alt text once again, instead of having to say things like page.locator and then the square brackets, alt text, whatever it was, equals all of this. Just tidies it up a little bit and it makes more sense of exactly what you're looking for. Now there's one more getBy method I want to go over, and then that should have gone through all of the new getBy methods that have been added in version 1.27. And to do this, we're now going to go create a new test, and we're going to go to the Amazon sign-in page. So I'm going to say getBy methods, and this one is Amazon, and I have a link for it, which we see on screen now. So I'm just going to copy this just to say go to here. Okay, so let's delete all of this and we'll say let's go to the Amazon sign-in page. Awesome. And the last one we want to do is getByLabel. getByLabel. On the Amazon page, let's inspect this and we can see there's a label here with the text of email or mobile phone number. So let's copy this and jump back into the test. And what we can say now is await page.getByLabel. Gonna pass through what it is, and you can see right here it allows locating input elements by the text of the associated label, which is exactly what we just copied. I can say exact again as an option, as you can see up the top here, but I'm not going to do that for this example. And I'm just going to say, okay, fill this in with subscribe. to commit quality. And I'll add a page.pause in here just so we can see it working. And we also want to say .only for this test, and then we removed it. Yep, we removed it for the Google one. So let's run this test and see the getByLabel method working. Okay, here we go. So we got the page paused. If I now step over it, we should see it's highlighted, step over again, and we should see it's filled into it. So there we are, nice and easy way of getting by label as well and filling in some details on that locator. And that's everything for these new getBy methods. I absolutely love this new addition to Playwright with these new methods. It's going to make everything a lot cleaner, and you haven't got to worry so much about the syntax anymore, and you can just use it by these methods. It's really going to tidy up page object models as well and just make it a little bit more readable to see what you're finding things by. As always, if you do have any questions or comments, please drop them below. Like and subscribe is appreciated, and have a good day.